Dad, that lady has blood on her coat and she keeps whispering the name Viper. Leo froze mid-step, the faded blanket falling short of the shivering figure huddled near the radiator. Rain lashed the window of their cramped third-floor apartment, sounding like stones. He had let her in 20 minutes ago, Amelia, claiming she just needed to escape the storm after her car broke down. 6-year-old Daisy's small, steady finger pointed at the dark wool of the woman's trench coat. It was torn near the shoulder, and the dark stain wasn't mud. Leo hadn't looked closely enough in the dim light. He realized immediately that this was not a stranded tourist. This was an active catastrophe brought straight into their fragile life. Leo knelt quickly, pulling the damp blanket higher around the woman's shoulders, his hands moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who often managed emergencies. He spoke low to Daisy, his voice rougher than usual. "Go get Buster, sweetie, and turn up the volume on the cartoon, okay? Daddy needs to check on our guest." Daisy, used to her father's quiet authority, nodded and scurried toward the living room, clutching a stuffed dog. The sound of a badly animated space adventure quickly muffled the rain. Leo turned back to Amelia. She was mid-30s, pale, and gripping the mug of lukewarm tea like a lifeline. He didn't ask about the blood. He didn't ask who Viper was. He simply assessed the situation, a deep, ragged tear in expensive fabric, bruising visible beneath the neckline where the collar was pulled tight, and eyes that were constantly scanning the window, even though the apartment was 3 stories up and overlooked an alley. His own apartment was a testament to survival, not comfort. The walls were painted a dull, worn cream. The single-paned windows rattled incessantly. The furniture consisted of hand-me-down pieces salvaged from Goodwill stores, solid, ugly, and functional. There was a faint scent of old wood and budget laundry detergent. Leo worked 2 jobs, night shift stocker at a warehouse and morning handyman for the building superintendent. He measured his life in hours of sleep missed and bills paid, nothing more. He reached for the cheap first aid kit kept under the sink. The act was automatic, devoid of judgment. He had dealt with worse on the dock. As he gently guided her arm out of the coat sleeve, he noticed a faint, jagged scar just above her elbow, almost hidden by the long sleeve. It wasn't recent, but it suggested a history of rough handling, a familiar kind of damage. Leo had his own scars, the invisible ones left by a father who walked out and a mother who disappeared into grief, leaving him to navigate the system alone. He glanced at the small framed picture on the dresser, a smiling woman with Daisy as an infant. That life, too, had been suddenly, brutally interrupted. Now everything Leo did was geared toward keeping the perimeter safe, small, and utterly predictable. The intrusion of a wounded stranger, a dark secret dripping on his threadbare rug, was the antithesis of everything he had built. He placed the antiseptic wipe near her wound, the silent question hanging heavy in the air between them. Amelia watched Leo's movements, the focus in his eyes, the large, competent hands. He wasn't trying to charm or interrogate her. He was treating the injury with pure, detached necessity. She flinched only slightly when the cold antiseptic touched the abrasion. "It's shallow," Leo stated, wrapping a clean gauze pad around her upper arm. "Looks like you scraped it against concrete, or maybe a quick exit through broken glass." He looked up, his expression guarded but level. "I don't call the police for scrapes." The statement was the closest he came to an invitation to trust. Amelia swallowed hard, the tea having done little to warm the coldness clinging to her bones. "Thank you," she managed, the words sounding foreign even to her own ears. "My car. It really did break down. Further down the interstate. I took a chance getting away from the tow truck driver. He looked wrong." It was a flimsy lie, but Leo accepted it with a slight tilt of his head, acknowledging the effort without endorsing the deceit. He gathered the supplies and moved toward the tiny kitchen, the linoleum squeaking under his weight. That was when Daisy reappeared. She walked quietly, Buster tucked under one arm, and held out a half-eaten oatmeal cookie on a slightly sticky napkin. "It's the last one," Daisy announced to Amelia, her wide blue eyes earnest. "Dad says cookies help people feel better when they're cold inside. You look cold inside." Amelia stared at the offered cookie, a perfect circle of comfort in her world of sharp edges. She hadn't been offered simple, unconditional kindness in years. The absurdity of accepting a cookie from a child after fleeing a violent confrontation was overwhelming. "Thank you, Daisy," Amelia whispered, taking the offering. The small girl sat down cross-legged on the floor a safe distance away, continuing to watch her with unblinking interest. Leo returned with a clean glass of water. "She means well," he said simply, placing the glass near Amelia. He didn't hover. He checked the clock, the signal that his shift was approaching. He was already stretching the limits of his scheduled routine. He was making a choice to stay a few minutes longer, a choice that cost him sleep and guaranteed him pain later, simply to ensure a wounded stranger had a few moments of safety. Amelia took a small bite of the cookie. It tasted like butter and home. She had the strange sensation that the real world, the one filled with vipers and threats, was receding, held back by the thin, rattling walls and the innocence of a 6-year-old girl. Where are you watching this story unfold from? Let me know in the comments. Leo needed to leave for his stocking shift by 10 p.m. sharp, but the rain had intensified, trapping Amelia in their small space. He couldn't in good conscience put a wounded, frightened woman out into that downpour, regardless of her mysterious circumstances. "The couch is yours," Leo said, stacking a pillow and the thick, scratchy winter blanket he usually kept in the trunk of his car. "I'll take the floor in Daisy's room. You lock the door behind me when I leave. Don't open it for anyone." Amelia didn't argue or offer excuses. She only asked, "What about Daisy?" "She sleeps through anything. She's safe, and she's quiet about things she sees," Leo replied, the implication clear. "Keep quiet, and you'll keep us safe." As he laced up his worn boots, Daisy came over holding a faded drawing. It was a picture of a house with 3 stick figures. One was tall, one was medium-sized, and one was tiny, labeled with wobbly letters. Me, Dad, and Mom. The Mom figure was crudely crossed out with a heavy black crayon mark. Daisy handed the picture to Amelia. "I drew you a house," she said, "but I ran out of time to draw another buster." Amelia's chest tightened. She looked at the drawing, at the crossed-out figure, and understood the quiet grief that permeated this apartment. She recognized the kind of emptiness Daisy was trying to fill. "It's the best house I've ever seen," Amelia murmured, folding the paper carefully and slipping it into her pocket, a pocket that usually held disposable cash and burner phone chips. Leo watched the exchange, a rare, momentary softening around his eyes. He saw Amelia accept the offering not as charity, but as a connection. "I need to go," Leo said, checking his watch again. "There's coffee if you can make it work. The stove is ancient. Don't touch the wires." "I won't," she promised. "And Leo, thank you. I'll be gone before you get back, I promise." He paused at the door, his hand on the 3 different locks he'd installed himself. "Just sleep," he instructed. "Worry about leaving when the sun is up." With a final solid click of the deadbolt, Leo left. The apartment was enveloped in a silence heavier than before, broken only by the rhythmic drumming of the rain and the soft, steady breathing of a 6-year-old girl down the hall. For Amelia, this space, defined by poverty and caution, felt impossibly safer than the gilded cage she had fled. The silence was not emptiness. It was a fragile boundary. Leo hated the warehouse shift. It was 12 hours of monotonous lifting and stacking under fluorescent lights that buzzed with aggressive indifference. But the rhythm of the work was a shield. It kept his mind tethered to the present, focusing on the weight of the boxes instead of the weight of the past. Tonight, however, the silence he sought was broken by the image of Amelia, pale and wounded on his threadbare sofa, and the drawing Daisy had given her. The crossed-out figure. While stacking crates of canned goods, his eyes landed on a tarnished silver whistle dangling from his keychain, a simple, cheap item that had no practical purpose. It was a key to a memory Leo rarely unlocked. He was 7 years old, standing on the curb of a suburban street in mid-October. He remembered the crisp, dry air and the smell of burning leaves. The whistle had been a gift from his father, a man who worked on the railroad, a man of schedules and departures. "If you ever need me, just blow this," his father had said, a promise heavy with the false weight of permanence. Leo had stood there for 2 hours after his father drove away, not coming back from the quick errand he had claimed to run. Leo was too afraid to blow the whistle, afraid that if he used it, the promise would be spent. He waited until the light faded and the streetlights flickered on, casting long, cold shadows. He finally blew it, a thin, reedy sound swallowed instantly by the evening traffic. He blew it until his lungs hurt, his small body shaking from the cold, realizing with every failed sound that the whistle wasn't a connection. It was a cruel joke. His mother found him there, silent tears freezing on his cheeks, the whistle clutched in his numb hand. She never mentioned the father again. Leo realized the whistle wasn't symbolic of a connection, but of an absolute failure of trust. A reminder that when you needed protection most, the person who promised it often chose to disappear. He threw the heavy box he was holding onto the pallet with unnecessary force. The sound echoed in the cavernous space. He looked at the tarnished silver on his keychain, a tiny, useless relic. He wasn't that scared boy anymore. Now he was the adult responsible for protection, and that responsibility extended, however illogical it felt, to the wounded woman sleeping 3 blocks away, holding a picture of a house with a missing mother. He knew with a sudden cold certainty that the danger Amelia carried was real, and if it broke through his door, he couldn't afford to stand still. Amelia did not leave by sunrise. The rain continued, heavy and relentless, turning the sidewalk outside into a treacherous sheet of water. More critically, the news reports on Leo's ancient television, watched on mute, detailed a high-speed chase involving a black sedan registered to a powerful anonymous corporation, ending in a messy crash 20 miles away. Amelia knew that crash was a distraction. They were still looking. Leo came back from his shift, exhausted and smelling faintly of cardboard and diesel. He didn't question her presence. He simply made 3 cups of coffee, 1 strong for him, 1 weaker for Amelia, and a small one with extra milk for Daisy, whom he called the boss. This routine, unplanned and unspoken, solidified over the next 3 days. Amelia kept to the living room, often reading Daisy's battered picture books. She was surprisingly good at storytelling, using different voices that captivated the girl. She helped with small, practical tasks, folding the laundry with meticulous care, wiping down the counters until they almost shone, and ensuring the chipped ceramic mugs were never left dirty. Leo watched her. She never asked about his work, never offered to pay, and never mentioned Viper again. Her kindness was quiet and focused on function. It was the kindness of someone who understood efficiency and minimizing friction. The atmosphere shifted subtly. The silence in the apartment started feeling less like a space where trauma was contained and more like a shared, quiet breath. When Leo was awake, he would sit at the small, wobbly kitchen table, working on invoices for the superintendent. Amelia would sit on the sofa, listening to Daisy narrate the plot of her space cartoon. One afternoon, Daisy came running in from the hall, her face streaked with dirt. She'd tried to help the superintendent move a heavy sack of concrete mix. "Dad, Amelia can fix things," Daisy announced proudly, pointing to a small tear in Buster's ear. Amelia took the stuffed dog without complaint, pulled a tiny, expensive sewing kit from her coat pocket, the same coat with the blood stain, and meticulously stitched the plush fabric. Her hands, which Leo suspected were meant for holding delicate files or maybe a weapon, were surprisingly adept at repair. Leo found himself staying longer between shifts. Instead of immediately collapsing into bed, he would linger in the kitchen, pretending to be busy organizing tools. He wasn't observing her for danger anymore. He was observing her for permanence. He hadn't felt this sense of quiet inclusion since before his wife passed, the easy shared weight of maintaining a home. He wasn't guarding his solitude. He was sharing a small, safe harbor. He started buying better coffee. The fragile routine shattered on the 5th day, not with a bang, but with the delivery of a bouquet of expensive white lilies. Leo was at the hardware store, picking up pipe fittings. Daisy was drawing at the kitchen table while Amelia was folding a load of towels. The doorbell rang, a grating. Unexpected sound in their usually silent building. Amelia tensed immediately, her entire posture shifting from relaxed woman to coiled wire. "I'll get it," Daisy offered, already heading for the door. Amelia's voice cracked, sharp and immediate. "No, stay back, Daisy." Daisy froze, startled by the sudden violence in the stranger's tone. Amelia moved swiftly, peering through the peephole. Outside stood a courier in a clean uniform, holding a vase. Amelia hesitated, then slowly opened the door, keeping her body a shield in front of Daisy. "Delivery for Ms. Thorne?" the courier asked, oblivious to the tension. Amelia accepted the flowers, her hand trembling slightly. She signed the slip with a swift, illegible flourish. The moment the door clicked shut, she was different, her eyes dark, assessing the pristine white flowers with thinly veiled horror. "Why did you say no, Amelia?" Daisy asked, her lower lip wobbling. "Why did you yell?" Amelia knelt, forcing her expression into softness, though her hands still gripped the vase tightly. "I'm sorry, sweetie, I didn't recognize the name. And we don't usually get flowers." Daisy, however, was already reacting to the lie she sensed. "But he said Thorne. You have a nice name, Amelia. Why did he use a bad name?" Amelia stood up quickly, placing the flowers on the highest shelf of the bookcase, almost hiding them. She didn't look at Daisy. When Leo returned an hour later, he noticed the shift instantly. Daisy was subdued, watching her cartoons without enthusiasm. Amelia was pacing the small area, rubbing her temples. "Everything all right?" Leo asked, dropping the heavy bag of tools. Amelia nodded too quickly. "Fine. I think I need to go. I've overstayed." Leo walked to the bookcase. The lilies were magnificent, the kind of flowers that cost more than his monthly rent. He pulled out the card tucked into the plastic sleeve. The script inside was elegant, menacingly brief. "We miss you, sweetheart. Come home. Dad, Viper." Leo's gaze snapped up to Amelia. "Thorne," he stated, the name feeling like a betrayal. "You told me your car broke down." "This is not a broken-down car, Amelia. This is a threat sent directly to my address. They know where you are because you led them here." Amelia paled, realizing she had been tracked through the delivery service, a subtle, cold-blooded reminder of her father's reach. "I didn't lead them, Leo. I don't know how they found me." "You don't know how the head of the city's largest illegal organization found his runaway daughter." Leo's voice was low, lethal, stripped of all recent tenderness. "You brought a target into a place where my daughter sleeps. You broke the only rule I had: safety." The wound of the past, the promise broken by his own father, erupted, fueled by the fear for Daisy. Amelia was silent, unable to defend her origins. She gathered her coat, the small packet of cash she'd been saving, and the reality of the danger she had inflicted settled around her like lead. "I'll leave now," she said simply, her eyes fixed on the floor. Daisy suddenly rushed forward, wrapping her small arms around Amelia's leg. "Don't go, Amelia. Don't be crossed out too." Leo pulled Daisy back gently but firmly. "She has to go, sweetie." Amelia met Leo's eyes. The trust, the fragile belonging they had built, had crumbled into dust, leaving only the sharp edges of fear and abandonment. She turned and walked out, leaving the lilies and the lingering, terrifying smell of expensive perfume and betrayal behind. Amelia's departure left a gaping silence in the apartment, amplified by Daisy's soft, heartbroken sobs. Leo rocked his daughter until she slept, the feeling of failure heavy in his chest. He had been right to be cautious, yet the way he had dismissed Amelia felt wrong. Brutal, necessary, but wrong. He looked at the lilies. They were a message, not a gift. They were proof that a highly organized, dangerous entity knew his face, his address, and the name of the woman he had sheltered. He had prioritized safety, but now he realized safety was already compromised. Leo knew the difference between running from danger and deflecting it. Amelia was running, but leaving his apartment didn't make the danger disappear. It only moved the target onto her back and put him in the crosshairs anyway. He remembered the faint scar on her arm, the efficiency in her hands, and the genuine fear in her eyes when the flowers arrived. She wasn't the head of the operation. She was the asset trying to break free. He waited until 2 a.m. Daisy was asleep, Buster clutched tight. Leo pulled on a dark hoodie, checked the small legal carry knife he kept for work, and took the vase of lilies. He didn't want to leave his daughter, but the memory of the useless silver whistle urged him to action. He wouldn't be the father who disappeared when the danger arrived. He drove his beat-up Ford truck across town to the area Amelia had originally described. the industrial zone where the luxury sedan was found wrecked. The entire area was quiet, monitored by occasional street cameras. Leo didn't look for Amelia. He looked for surveillance. He found it quickly. A dark, unmarked sedan parked 2 blocks away from the wreckage, slightly concealed by the shadow of an empty warehouse. The windows were tinted black. Leo parked his truck and walked toward the car, carrying the vase of lilies in a strangely ceremonial manner. He approached the driver's side and, without knocking, smashed the thick glass of the side window with the base of the heavy glass vase. The alarm didn't go off. These cars were too expensive for simple alarms. The man inside, a large suited figure with cold eyes, slumped forward, momentarily stunned by the glass shower. Leo didn't waste time on explanations. He tossed the card, the one signed Dad, Viper, onto the man's lap. "She's gone," Leo said, his voice flat and hard. "You sent these to the wrong address. She's not here anymore. You got the location wrong. You wasted your time and compromised your source." He knew this was a massive risk, but the message had to be confusing, direct, and delivered with conviction. He needed to make them believe the trail had gone ice cold, that their tracking was faulty, and that his address was a dead end. As the suited man recovered, reaching for something under his seat, Leo was already sprinting back to his truck. He peeled out, leaving the surveillance team to assess the shattered window and the lingering scent of expensive lilies. He didn't look in the rearview mirror. He hadn't sought revenge or recognition. He had simply chosen to protect the space they had shared, even if he had to step into the darkness to do it. Leo returned before dawn, his adrenaline slowly wearing off, replaced by the crushing fatigue of the double shift and the night's detour. He changed out of his clothes, meticulously cleaning the fine shards of glass from his hair and jacket. He made coffee and sat in the quiet kitchen, waiting for the sun to rise. At 7 a.m. the light was grey and weak, filtering through the humid air. He heard a soft sound from the fire escape outside the kitchen window, a scrape of metal followed by a light tap. Leo walked over and opened the window. Amelia stood on the rusted metal platform, soaked to the bone, her hair plastered to her temples. She was holding a plastic bag containing a single stale bagel. She hadn't gone far. She had been waiting for him to leave, probably. Hiding in the network of alleys and stairwells she knew too well. Her eyes were sunken, but the desperation had been replaced by a weary resolve. "They drove by this morning," Amelia whispered, not moving from the fire escape. A different car, but the same type of lookouts. They drove slowly, then sped up. They didn't stop. Leo registered the information. His distraction had worked. They believed the lead was cold. "I didn't think you'd come back," Leo said simply, stepping back to allow her room to climb in. "I didn't leave," Amelia countered, stepping across the sill and onto his floor. "I couldn't, not knowing if I had compromised you, or if they'd circle back." She saw the exhaustion etched around his eyes and realized he hadn't slept. "What did you do, Leo?" He didn't answer directly. He poured her a cup of the strong black coffee. "Take off that coat, you're going to get sick." As Amelia shed the damp wool, Daisy emerged from her room, Buster still clutched in her arms. She saw Amelia, not as the source of a traumatic yell, but simply as the returning familiar presence. Daisy walked straight up to Amelia and hugged her around the waist, holding tight. "Dad says you didn't leave your bagel," Daisy mumbled into Amelia's hip, referring to the bagel Amelia had picked up on her run. "But I think you just ran away because you felt crossed out." The simple, honest observation, that Amelia felt like the discarded figure in the drawing, hit Amelia harder than any threat from her father. She knelt, embracing the child tightly, burying her face in the smell of baby shampoo and old cotton. "I didn't run from you, sweetie," Amelia managed, her voice thick. "I just needed to make sure the door was safe before I came back inside." Leo watched the exchange from the kitchen, his posture rigid. No explanations were necessary. The cold, practical reality was that they were safer together, defending this small square footage of quiet, than apart. He didn't need an apology or a grand statement. He only needed the choice to be made visible. Amelia was here, accepting the danger, choosing their space. The next weeks settled into a rhythm that felt less temporary and more intentional. Amelia sold the last expensive piece of jewelry she had carried, a diamond-studded watch. To buy groceries, a new set of towels, and a lock for the fire escape window. She started applying for local jobs, using a fake name and the address of a distant, abandoned post office box. She was building a shadow life within their existing, modest reality. Leo never asked about Viper again. He only accepted that Amelia was efficient, quiet, and absolutely focused on protecting the peace she had found. She didn't seek to replace Daisy's mother, but she became a stable, adult presence, the one who remembered the doctor's appointments and made sure Leo ate something besides cold pizza after his night shifts. One Saturday morning, the sun actually shone, pouring dust motes into the small living room. Daisy was sitting on the floor using a new box of crayons Amelia had bought. Leo was fixing a leaky faucet in the bathroom, the sound of rhythmic wrenching echoing softly. Amelia was kneading dough on the small, clean kitchen counter, attempting to bake bread. She had never baked before, but she was meticulously following a recipe she found online, determined to make the apartment smell like something other than old wood and coffee. Daisy looked up from her drawing, her brow furrowed in concentration. She was drawing another house. This time, there were 3 stick figures: me, Dad, and Amelia. None were crossed out. Daisy held the crayon up to her, a tiny, dark brown stick figure she hadn't colored yet. "Amelia," Daisy called out. "Can a good person be made of mud, or do they have to be shiny?" Amelia paused, flour dusting her elbows. She looked at the child, then glanced at the closed bathroom door where Leo worked, the sound of the wrenching stopping. "Good people are usually made of mud, sweetie," Amelia said gently. "They have flaws and dirt, and they've been stepped on a few times, the shiny ones. They usually break too easily." Daisy nodded, satisfied with the answer. She colored the last stick figure brown right next to Amelia's name, cementing the new order of their world. The wrenching started again in the bathroom. Leo had heard the exchange. He didn't need to see the drawing to know the unspoken contract had been signed. They were no longer 3 lonely people sharing a temporary space, but a messy, practical assembly of broken pieces, choosing to hold together. The daughter of a Mafia boss had found her safety not in escape, but in belonging to a poor single dad who understood the choice of protection over solitude. This story of finding family where you least expect it is truly unforgettable. If you were moved by Leo's choice to protect Daisy and Amelia, show us your support. Give this video a like, comment below your favorite moment of quiet strength, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful, true-to-life emotional scripts.